Welcome to our journey into one of America's earliest and most overlooked conflicts, the Northwest Indian War. A brutal struggle for control over the frontier, where the fate of the new nation and the Native American tribes hung in the balance. Stick around as we uncover the battles, betrayals, and bold leaders who shaped the course of history in the wild Northwest Territory. The Northwest Indian War was not just a military conflict. It was the culmination of centuries of tension and competition for control over the rich lands of the Northwest Territory. Before the war officially began in 1786, the seeds of conflict had already been sown. European powers, particularly Great Britain and France, had long vied for dominance over this region, but the Native American tribes had always been the true stewards of the land. The Ohio River Valley, with its dense forests, winding rivers, and fertile plains, was a treasure trove that both European settlers and Native Americans were determined to claim. In the 18th century, as European settlers pushed westward, they began to encroach on territories traditionally held by Native American nations. These lands, teeming with wildlife and fertile for agriculture, were essential to the survival of the native peoples who had lived there for generations. However, to the settlers, these lands represented opportunity and expansion, a chance to build new lives and communities in the wilderness. This clash of visions set the stage for a protracted and bloody struggle. By the end of the American Revolutionary War, the United States emerged as an independent nation, but its ambitions did not stop at the Appalachian Mountains. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, granted the United States control over the Northwest Territory, a vast region that included present-day Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and parts of Wisconsin and Minnesota. Despite this, the British continued to maintain military outposts in the region and foster alliances with Native American tribes, fueling tensions that would soon erupt into open conflict. As settlers continued to move westward, the Native American tribes of the Northwest Territory recognized the urgent need to band together to defend their lands. In 1785, a powerful alliance was formed, known as the Northwestern Confederacy. This confederation was led by the Huron-Wyandot tribe and included various other tribes such as the Shawnee, Miami, Delaware, and Ottawa. These tribes had distinct cultures and languages, but they were united by a common cause: to protect their homeland from the relentless push of European American settlers. The Northwestern Confederacy was not just a military alliance. It was a political and cultural coalition that sought to maintain Native American sovereignty in the face of overwhelming odds. Leaders like Little Turtle of the Miami tribe and Blue Jacket of the Shawnee emerged as key figures, rallying their people to resist the encroachment of settlers and the imposition of U.S. authority. These leaders understood that divided, their tribes would fall. United, they stood a chance of preserving their way of life. The Confederacy declared that the lands north and west of the Ohio River were Indian territory, and any further encroachment by settlers would be met with force. This declaration was a bold statement of defiance against the United States and set the stage for the brutal conflict that would follow. The formation of the Confederacy was a significant moment in Native American history, representing both the resilience and the desperation of the tribes as they faced an existential threat to their existence. As tensions escalated, the United States government under President George Washington decided to assert its claim over the Northwest Territory through military force. However, the fledgling U.S. Army was ill-prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. The Army at that time was composed mainly of inexperienced recruits and volunteer militiamen, many of whom had little to no formal training. This lack of preparedness became painfully evident in the early stages of the Northwest Indian War. In 1790, the United States launched its first major military campaign into the Northwest Territory, led by General Josiah Harmar. The objective was to subdue the Native American resistance and secure U.S. control over the region. However, the campaign was a disaster. The Native American forces, led by Little Turtle, utilized their knowledge of the terrain to launch devastating ambushes against the U.S. troops. Harmar's forces were outmaneuvered and overwhelmed, suffering heavy casualties in what would later be known as Harmar's defeat. Undeterred, the U.S. government mounted another campaign in 1791, this time under the command of General Arthur St. Clair. Once again, the U.S. forces faced a united and determined Native American opposition. In what became known as St. Clair's defeat, the U.S. Army suffered one of the worst defeats in its history. Out of approximately 1,400 men, nearly 900 were killed or wounded. The scale of the loss was staggering, leaving the United States in a state of shock and vulnerability. These early defeats highlighted the determination and military prowess of the Northwestern Confederacy, as well as the shortcomings of the U.S. military at that time. The Native American victory was a testament to their strategic acumen and their deep connection to the land they were fighting to protect. For the United States, these defeats underscored the need for a more disciplined and capable military force if it were to succeed in asserting control over the Northwest Territory. As tensions escalated, the United States government under President George Washington decided to assert its claim over the Northwest Territory through military force. However, the fledgling U.S. Army was ill-prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. The Army at that time was composed mainly of inexperienced recruits and volunteer militiamen, many of whom had little to no formal training. This lack of preparedness became painfully evident in the early stages of the Northwest Indian War. In 1790, the United States launched its first major military campaign into the Northwest Territory, led by General Josiah Harmar. The objective was to subdue the Native American resistance and secure U.S. control over the region. However, the campaign was a disaster. The Native American forces, led by Little Turtle, utilized their knowledge of the terrain to launch devastating ambushes against the U.S. troops. Harmar's forces were outmaneuvered and overwhelmed, suffering heavy casualties in what would later be known as Harmar's defeat. Undeterred, the U.S. government mounted another campaign in 1791, this time under the command of General Arthur St. Clair. Once again, the U.S. forces faced a united and determined Native American opposition. In what became known as St. Clair's defeat, the U.S. Army suffered one of the worst defeats in its history. Out of approximately 1,400 men, nearly 900 were killed or wounded. The scale of the loss was staggering, leaving the United States in a state of shock and vulnerability. These early defeats highlighted the determination and military prowess of the Northwestern Confederacy, as well as the shortcomings of the U.S. military at that time. The Native American victory was a testament to their strategic acumen and their deep connection to the land they were fighting to protect. For the United States, these defeats underscored the need for a more disciplined and capable military force if it were to succeed in asserting control over the Northwest Territory. The climax of the Northwest Indian War came on August 20, 1794, at the Battle of Fallen Timbers. General Anthony Wayne, leading his well-prepared and disciplined Legion of the United States, confronted the forces of the Northwestern Confederacy near the southwestern shore of Lake Erie, close to present-day Toledo, Ohio. The battle took place in a densely wooded area where a recent storm had knocked down numerous trees, giving the battlefield its name. Wayne's forces, numbering around 3,000 men, included regular soldiers, militiamen, and a small contingent of Native American allies. Opposing them were approximately 1,500 Native American warriors, led by Blue Jacket of the Shawnee and supported by a smaller number of British and Canadian forces. Despite the challenging terrain, Wayne's troops advanced with precision, executing a well-coordinated attack that overwhelmed the Native American forces. The battle was fierce but relatively brief, lasting less than 2 hours. The Native American warriors, outnumbered and outgunned, were forced to retreat. Wayne's victory at Fallen Timbers was decisive, effectively breaking the power of the Northwestern Confederacy and bringing an end to major hostilities in the Northwest Territory. The battle marked a turning point in the United States' expansion into the frontier, paving the way for further settlement and the establishment of U.S. sovereignty over the region. In the aftermath of the battle, General Wayne moved to solidify U.S. control by establishing a series of forts in the region, including Fort Wayne at the Miami capital of Kikianga. These forts served as symbols of American authority and a deterrent against any future Native American resistance. Wayne's victory at Fallen Timbers would lead to the Treaty of Greenville in 1795, in which the defeated tribes ceded large portions of their lands to the United States. The victory at the Battle of Fallen Timbers set the stage for a new era in the Northwest Territory, one that would be defined by the Treaty of Greenville. In 1795, the defeated tribes of the Northwestern Confederacy were compelled to negotiate with the United States. The resulting treaty was a landmark agreement that reshaped the map of the region and the future of Native American relations with the U.S. government. The Treaty of Greenville forced the Native American tribes to cede vast tracts of land to the United States, including most of what is now Ohio, as well as parts of Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan. In return, the U.S. government promised to respect the remaining Native American lands and provided annual payments to the tribes. However, these promises would prove to be fleeting, as the expansionist pressures of the growing United States continued to encroach on native lands in the years that followed. For the Native American tribes, the treaty was a bitter pill to swallow. While it brought an end to the immediate conflict, it also signaled the beginning of a new phase of dispossession and displacement. The loss of their lands was a devastating blow to their cultures, economies, and way of life. Despite their best efforts to resist, the Native American nations were gradually pushed further west, away from their ancestral homelands. The Treaty of Greenville also had broader implications for the United States. It opened up vast new areas for settlement and development, fueling the westward expansion that would define the nation's growth in the 19th century. The treaty helped to establish U.S. authority in the Northwest Territory, but it also laid the groundwork for future conflicts with Native American tribes as the United States continued to expand its borders at their expense. The Northwest Indian War was a significant chapter in the history of the United States, leaving a complex and lasting legacy. It was a conflict that highlighted the stark contrasts between the ambitions of a young nation and the determination of Native American tribes to defend their homelands. The war also underscored the brutal realities of frontier life and the often harsh measures taken to secure American expansion. For the United States, the war marked the beginning of a long series of conflicts with Native American tribes, conflicts that would continue well into the 19th century. The victory in the Northwest Indian War paved the way for the United States to expand further westward, but it also set a precedent for the treatment of Native American nations, one characterized by broken treaties, forced relocations, and the erosion of indigenous cultures. The Native American tribes who fought in the Northwest Indian War did so with incredible bravery and resilience. Leaders like Little Turtle, Blue Jacket, and others became symbols of resistance, their names remembered in both Native American history and U.S. military annals. However, despite their efforts, the war ultimately resulted in the loss of their lands and autonomy, a fate that would befall many other Native American nations in the years to come. The Northwest Indian War also served as a critical test for the U.S. government and its military. The defeats suffered early in the war exposed the weaknesses of the fledgling U.S. Army, leading to significant reforms and the professionalization of the military under leaders like General Anthony Wayne. The lessons learned during this conflict would shape the development of the U.S. military and its strategies in future wars. Today, the Northwest Indian War is often overshadowed by other events in American history, but its impact can still be felt. The war set the stage for the United States' westward expansion and the continued struggles of Native American nations to preserve their lands and cultures. It is a reminder of the complex and often painful history of the United States, a history that continues to resonate in the present day. The Northwest Indian War was more than just a fight for land. It was a battle for survival, identity, and the future of a continent. The echoes of this conflict still resonate today. If you found this deep dive into history as fascinating as we did, hit that subscribe button and join us for more untold stories of America's past. Don't miss out. There's so much more to explore.